excited I get to talk about one of my favorite directors of all time, Martin Scorsese. What is your favorite Martin Scorsese films? What is your ranking? I want to know what your top 10 are. And while you're down there, don't forget to click that like button and subscribe to my channel for more content. Here, I am picking the movies that ones I think are the best made by Martin Scorsese, the ones that are the most rewatchable and I go to the most, and the ones that I just personally enjoy. So let's talk about my top 10 favorite films of Martin Scorsese. Starting with number 10 is going to Shutter Island. Now, this is a film that even Martin Scorsese says, like, he wasn't that crazy to do, but I thought he executed this movie amazing. The tone is so drab and dark and eerie and creepy, and it is like a horror movie at times, but it is for sure a suspense thriller. It is a psychological thriller film, and it messes with your mind. Even now, knowing the twist and what happens in the story with our character, our main character played by great Leonardo DiCaprio performance, it still catches me off guard, and it still has just this impact on you, and it just messes with your mind. Performances, the setting, the location, the tone, the atmosphere, the great camera work, the awesome story that takes place. I thought the cinematography is beautiful. But what I love about this film above all else is the psychological impact it has. And he's really asking at really the heart of all his films, like masculinity in America and what it looks like and different forms of it. And this is one that you get to see that's a real heavy psychological take on that theme. And I love it.
Oh, I love it, I love it.
Number 9 is going to Mean Streets. Martin Scorsese arriving on set, on the scene, saying, I'm here, I'm a great filmmaker, watch what I'm gonna do next. This is an awesome film that is really gritty in New York City in the 70s. It sets this great palette of characters in this dark, seedy underworld of criminals and mafia and enforcers and bar owners. Really cool take and an awesome jumping off point of where Martin Scorsese is going to go with his storytelling. And the tone of it is grimy and sleazy. It is such a young, ambitious man's movie, and I love the themes that come up in it and this like dark, seedy undertone and what we're willing to do for friends. Like, I know even with the crazy Johnny boy played by the great Robert De Niro in this film, and Harvey Keitel, and the cast is awesome in this movie, and it's so well executed. It has to go on the list. Yes, it might not be his best edited movie, and it might not be his strongest, most potent film either. I think Mean Streets, you have to recognize it. Next on my list is going to be a little bit of a controversial take, I think.
Interesting.
Number 8 is going to Gangs of New York. I know a lot of people probably right now are shouting at their screens. And I get it, okay? First of all, I have to say, Gangs of New York, not his top 10 best movies, you know? I think if this was like a list of his best Martin Scorsese films, this movie would not be on that list. But for me, the impact that this epic movie that I snuck into, the impact it had on me was immense. This is one of those movies that I saw Daniel Day-Lewis as Bill the Butcher, and I went, I want to do that. I want to be an actor.
Would have to become a superstar.
That performance is astonishing. And of course, There Will Be Blood, My Left Foot, like they're all great performances, but I think this is my personal favorite performance of Daniel Day-Lewis in any of his films he's ever done ever. This is so interesting of a character. Absolutely perfect for the tone of this movie, and I thought it was awesome. This is an epic movie. Like, it is a huge production. The action is brutal and disgusting at parts, and that's kind of the point. And the story is interesting, shot beautifully. I think it looks great, but it's not a perfect film, and I totally understand that. There are some flaws. Of course, the biggest one for me is Cameron Diaz. I don't know how she got casted in this role. She was awful. I have a hard time watching any of her scenes. In fact, the last time I rewatched Gangs of New York, I just happened to scroll through all her scenes.
Ouch, baby. Very ouch.
There's some editing to this film that is bizarre, to say the least, but I think they're just trying to do a bit too much with this film, and if they just kind of reined back on the story of revenge of Amsterdam going for Bill the Butcher, this movie just would have been streamlined a bit more. I rewatch this movie all the time. I find it highly entertaining. It's kind of like the B movie of Martin Scorsese films, and I'm totally okay with it. Gotta have one on every list. Spot number 7 is going to the king of comedy. Yes, the original Joker film without Joaquin Phoenix, with Robert De Niro as our comedian, as our failed, mentally disturbed comedian. This movie is phenomenal. If you haven't had a chance to check out the king of comedy, but you've seen Joker, you're probably gonna go back and go, oh my gosh, Joker took so much from the king of comedy. Yes, absolutely. Todd Phillips openly talks about how he used a lot of Martin Scorsese films like Taxi Driver, Mean Streets, and especially the king of comedy as his basis for his film Joker. I mean, they even got Robert De Niro, who played Rupert Pupkin, to be the talk show host in Joker. This is a movie that has grown with time. I think if you ask people 20, 30 years ago, is The King of Comedy one of Martin Scorsese's best films? Most people would say no, absolutely not. However, I feel like it's come to be appreciated so much more over the years. It is dark, comedic, messed up, strange, a great commentary on fame and society. People want this drive and want to be bigger and larger than life, but aren't willing to do the actual work for it. Even if the actual work itself is really messed up, like kidnapping a talk show host. And this movie explores that ideology so well. Of course, you got the great performances at the center of it with Jerry Lewis and Robert De Niro, of course. It's just an awesome movie that has a great punchline, some dark, disturbing things, some very dark comedic things as well. I just think it's a great blend and a different sort of take with Martin Scorsese at the helm. I think it is one of his most interesting films, maybe not one of his best executed and his most technically achieving movies, but the idea, the story, and the performances I just thought were awesome in this film. Number 6 goes to Raging Bull. So I saw this movie at a very young age, like 9, maybe 10 years old. Might have been a little too young to see it at the times, but you know what? I didn't really care because I was getting to see this excellent piece of cinema. This has to be one of my favorite looking films of Martin Scorsese. It's not just about the black and white. Yes, that's a part of it, but how he shot the fights in the arena with Jake LaMotta, how he filmed his scenes of him spiraling in his life into despair, how the same rage that makes him that raging bull inside of the arena tears everything else in his life down around him, eventually breaking him to this overweight comedy club owner that is just a alcoholic, lonely, drunk, isolated, angry man. And it is such an in-depth character study. When people talk to me about like movies that are character studies, this is a movie that pops into my mind, is Raging Bull, because I think it is so well acted by Robert De Niro. This is when I saw him as a child and went, ooh, he's amazing. Joe Pesci is astonishing in this film. I didn't even notice that was Joe Pesci until years later. Oh my god, I forgot Joe Pesci was the friend in this film. That's right. Man, him and Robert De Niro doing movies together with Martin Scorsese is just a winning formula. A hard movie to go back and rewatch. It's probably, to me, one of his least rewatchable movies that I have on my list, but it is an incredible sports drama biopic boxing film. And number 5 on my list is another Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci Martin Scorsese picture with Casino. Casino, or Goodfellas 2.0. People were like, what are you doing with The Age of Innocence? No. And he was like, okay, going back to the mafia gangster film, except this time it's in Las Vegas. One of his most stylish movies. It's just so fantastical, in your face, aggressive. What a film. Sharon Stone is absolutely incredible in this film. I loved her performance in this. Just that off-kiltered socialite who's just that fast-living, fast-loving woman who was willing to do anything to get to the top and to hustle and to make money. Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci, they are astonishing. And I think this movie might be one of his most rewatchable films. Love the cinematography, the brightness to this film. It's so different from Goodfellas, which is so much darker and grittier and more blue. This is much more yellow and bright and stylistic and clear and glossy. I think this movie just shows the contrast in what Martin Scorsese is able to do so differently in all his films. Yes, he might have some similarities in his movies, but they're also two vastly different stories and two vastly different films. And I love that. He's able to blend and mix and kind of be a chameleon in different styles. Like if you look at another film called Silence, that's not on my list anywhere, and then you look at Casino, you're like, man, how is this made by the same filmmaker? He is amazing, and I think Casino really establishes him as one of the greatest filmmakers ever. He is someone that is artistic and articulate and entertaining all at once. So number 4 is going to The Departed, the film that shocked Martin Scorsese himself for winning Best Director.
Could you double check the envelope?
Because The Departed is not his best made film. I think this is a movie that is severely flawed, but its flaws almost make it like a better movie. I just personally love this film. This is, to me, the movie I've rewatched of his. As soon as it starts, it just goes, and never lets up. You don't have a moment to ever really breathe in this movie because you're just like anticipating what's gonna happen next. Where's this going? Is this relationship gonna turn out to be? It just pulls in the audience, brings in our curiosity, and keeps us stuck there for the entire almost 3-hour runtime. The cast is amazing. One of the best casts ever assembled. Leo is fantastic. Matt Damon is at his shit-eating heel grin, better than he's ever been. Mark Wahlberg is like doing some over-the-top shit that absolutely works in this movie. Jack Nicholson's going absolutely batshit crazy. Another one of his films that feels bombastic and aggressive, but while still being very methodical, meaningful, and having stakes that feel real and lived in throughout the entirety of the film. The twist at the end and just, the last like 15-20 minutes of this movie is a thrill ride. It's probably one of the most shocking moments in a Martin Scorsese film ever. The Departed is one of his most rewatchable, his most entertaining, his most well-rounded films. Even if it's flawed at times, it's just so highly entertaining. That's why it's at number 4 for me. Number 3 on my list for today is The Wolf of Wall Street. Now, I've mentioned the term bombastic a few times in this review. This is Martin Scorsese's most bombastic film. It is insane. It is a big, massive party. And that's how you're supposed to feel. It's supposed to feel like you are living this high life with this man, and the fact that it's based on a true story is crazy in itself. But you're supposed to feel like you're on the ride, doing the drugs, on the vehicles, in the boats, at the huge house parties with all these people and experiencing it. Rotten point of view by the end of the film that I think is just very true to modern times in our modern world. This is such a great comedy. This is such a great drama. This is such a great commentary on greed, the American dream, about whether it's best to be a poor good man or a rich bad man. It brings up a lot of very interesting questions. Of course, Leo DiCaprio back again with Martin Scorsese, and Leo DiCaprio really got to show off his like comedic chops in this film and his physical comedy and how good he really can be. The amazing Margot Robbie, I thought she's just astonishing in this film. Rob Reiner is hilarious as Jordan Belfort's father, and a whole other slew of great character actors are in this film. The cast is amazing. The set pieces are astonishing. The cinematography is beautiful. The story is interesting and it's intriguing, sad, upsetting, and yet also just a thrill ride to be on. And it's hard to take your eyes off the screen as soon as this movie starts. One of his most rewatchable films, even if the story is pretty messed up. No one else could have done it better than Martin Scorsese. I think number 2 and number 1 are going to be no surprise to anyone, but number 2 is Taxi Driver. This movie messed me up.
That's messed up, baby. That's mad messed up.
Disturbed me to the point where I didn't want to watch it, and I didn't, because I saw it when I was like 11, and I didn't watch it till like 4 or 5 years ago, and yeah, it's incredible. I rewatched it again for this video. This is a beautiful, scary, but beautiful character piece. And what I mean by beautiful is that it is so well explored. The topic of this war vet who's come back from Vietnam and is stuck in this grimy, sleazy, dirty New York City where he's a cab driver in this disgusting part of New York City, and how that fuels his rage and anger to want to commit violent acts. And then by the end, when all that violence goes down and there's that crazy scene with the pimp and his crew, and he's heralded as a hero. He's fine for right now, but at some point he's gonna have to commit another violent act. Just the themes that are explored in that alone with this character, with this story, it's just amazing. It is top-notch filmmaking. If I think of like a messed up character movie, this is the film I think of. It's a psychological thriller, it's a political thriller, it's a character study, it's a darkly comedic, messed up movie. It's hard to watch at times. It's probably one of his most disturbing films too. Robert De Niro is at his best here. This is his best performance. It's hard to distinguish like Robert De Niro from Travis Bickle in certain ways because he just feels so lived in that character and scary and threatening, and yet you still have sympathy for him. And I think that's only because of the amazing filmmaking and the amazing acting from Martin Scorsese and Robert De Niro. I wouldn't say it's his most rewatchable because I don't rewatch this movie very often. I've only seen it like 3 or 4 times, but as a master filmmaker, as an amazing piece of character study, this to me is one of his best movies. And to me, it's one of my favorites. And number 1, I think will be no surprise here for anyone, but my number 1 spot, my gold medal, goes to Goodfellas. This is to me actually one of my favorite films ever. It's a masterpiece. Like, this to me is a masterpiece. What a story. You know, over 3 decades of life in the mafia in New York City, based on Henry Hill's life in the mob, and it's so much fun. Again, another bombastic film.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster.
This is a movie that is so rewatchable, so quotable. It's got such amazing cinematography, the way he moves the camera in and out of scenes. And I'm not just talking about the famous single take through the restaurant, the montages that they have with the music choices. This is such a phenomenal soundtrack. One of my favorite great performances. My favorite Ray Liotta performance. One of my favorite Robert De Niro performances. My favorite Joe Pesci performance. My favorite Pauly Sorvino performance. Like, this movie just rocks. It's a rock concert of a film. A crime movie that brings up a lot of interesting themes and questions. A great character study. Entertaining. Action-packed. Intense. Funny as hell. Scary as shit. It's just a well-rounded movie. It's breathtaking.
Take my breath away.
If I ask someone what's a Martin Scorsese film, almost every time they say like Goodfellas. It's always on someone's list somewhere in the top 5, and it's because it's a beautifully artistic film while still being entertaining and having a really great runtime, and it never lets you off the ride. So that's why, to me, Goodfellas is Martin Scorsese's best made film, and it's also my personal favorite.
We did it!
Thank you so much for joining me today on Mr. T's Film Preach. Come back and check out some other reviews like No One Will Save You, Killers of the Flower Moon. Have a great day, everyone. Stay focused, stay awesome, and as always, let's get Todd.